Okay. Welcome everyone to this morning's conversation about what we're doing in our strategy to accelerate research, our STAR program. There's a lot going on here, and we're excited to share all of it with you. I want to start talking out a little bit just about clinical trials and how drugs get approved at a very high level and how we think about it at the CMTA, because we really believe it's important to play a role in every step of this process, from bench to bedside, from preclinical research when we're testing things in animals to going through patients in clinical trials and then ultimately to the marketplace. And you might be surprised to hear this, but drugs don't get approved because they work. They get approved because they have a positive benefit-risk ratio. And so all along the drug development process, we're testing the benefit, which we call the efficacy, and we're testing the risk, which we call the safety. And so early on in development, we're testing it in small numbers of patients and focusing on safety. And later on in development, the trials get bigger and bigger, and we are able to enroll more patients. And so we invest in our strategy to accelerate research, STAR programs, in all steps of this process because we think all steps are so important to what we do. So when we're first testing in animals, we invest in sponsored research, in university sites. We have what we call our preclinical toolbox, which is a group of animals, models and cell culture models that we actually go out and we market to biotech and pharma companies. And we say, here's a way to check really quickly if your therapy would work for CMT. Maybe you're studying another peripheral neuropathy. Maybe you're studying something where the biology makes sense for our community. Here's a ready-to-go process where you can test it on behalf of the CMT community. This is the general next step of how it works in clinical trials. So there's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. This is the standard approach that you hear about. So phase 1 is safety. Phase 2 is kind of what's the right dose. And phase 3, those are the big efficacy trials where we're really studying the benefit. And you'll hear a little bit more about that as we go through today. In rare diseases like CMT, we're always trying to find ways to go faster. So sometimes you hear about 1-2 trials and 2-3 trials because we're trying to be clever about what we could realistically do in a small number of patients. And the other thing that's really important to know for something that doesn't yet have an approved treatment is that we not only have to have the drug, but we have to have a way to understand how to figure out if it works. And so we invest in both parts of that equation. So natural history studies where we track patients to see how do things change over time, and biomarkers and outcomes. And you'll hear more about those today. How do we measure how those things change? So we've got a clinical trial readiness program that involves both of those. And we also invest in what are those treatments. And those are the things that get it across the finish line, ultimately to an approval and the market. And one of the reasons we're focusing on SWORD today is because it could actually be the first product approved for any CMT subtype. And we're super excited about that. We've played a really important role. And you'll hear more about our partnership with Applied Therapeutics as we go through today. And there's a whole session later on SWORD specifically. So we all know that Charcot-Marie-Tooth is not about teeth. We do embrace the shark part of it, though. And so sometimes you'll see us in our social media really wearing our shark hats and our shark uniforms. And so we love that part of it. It has 133 known genes so far, and more to be discovered. We know that of the known genetic causes, about 50% are 1A, so there's some very common forms. We also know that there's 40% of folks in our community who don't have a genetic diagnosis. We're investing in understanding that through things like Genesis and Dr. Stefan Zuckner, who's going to be up here later this morning to tell you about that. All of that's important. And so when we think about how do we address all the types of CMT, we think about both genetic approaches and biology approaches. So you hear a lot about gene therapy. These are really specifically targeted to a gene mutation. But when you've got 133 genes that could be affecting your disease, there's an approach about biology as well that's really important to remember. So as we know, this is a peripheral neuropathy. So what does that mean? You've got your central nervous system, that's your brain, and you've got your peripheral nervous system. That's everything that connects your brain and your spinal cord to all the places that that signal needs to go. And if you think about that signal like a wire, that's what the axons do. The neurons do. The axon is like the wire, and the coding of that wire is like the myelin. And so those signals from the neurons have to go all the way from your central nervous system to your peripheral nervous system, and it doesn't work very well. And so if you think about transmitting that signal through a wire, the places that it has the farthest to go are the places where you feel it first. That's why hands and feet are a problem, right? Because that's the signal. It's got so far to go. And so when we think about research and how to find treatments for CMT, we think about both genetics and we think about biology. What are those approaches that also affect biology? Things that affect and help axons be strong and healthy could help all type 2 patients. Things that affect myelin and myelin stability could help all type 1s and 4s. So across the board, as we think about how to impact everybody and help everybody, we're really focused both on things that help genetics as well as biology. And that's really how we try to help everybody in the community who's got a CMT diagnosis. We have a huge portfolio of projects. We've invested actually $30 million to date in research since STAR was started in 2008, which is we are the largest philanthropic funder of CMT research on the planet Earth, as it turns out. We spent $4.3 million in 2023 alone. We have a comprehensive strategy, as I mentioned, to invest across the board in all CMT subtypes, as well as from clinical trial readiness through actual therapies. And our STAR advisory board is the brightest minds, really, who are researchers, clinicians, as well as drug developers who come together to connect, to find ways to move this forward as quickly as possible. And you'll hear about a huge success story there in SWORD later today. We've got more than 50 studies ongoing. There's too many to share with you all today because Catherine just wouldn't give me enough time in the agenda, but that's okay. That's okay. There's our research toolbox, which is what we actually use to market to companies to say, come into our space. This is a community that's ready for drugs. We're looking for solutions. Here's a way that we can help you test your therapy in our space. We have over 50 partners, and fundamentally, it's patients as partners in research, folks who are willing to spend the time to help make sure the patient voice is heard in drug development and help develop products. We've got 30 active sponsored research projects going on right now. Because the portfolio is large, we're able to use things across subtypes to help. So I can tell you that we've got some data from a gene therapy trial in 1A that's directly helped a gene therapy program in 4C. I can tell you we're investing in a program for 4J that has a really interesting regulatory strategy of how to move really fast in a rare subtype that we think is going to help every rare subtype that's out there. We've got a nanoparticle delivery project that's technically in 1X, but if that works, it's going to help all subtypes of CMT. And we also do natural history studies, which help us understand, again, how does the disease progress and how can we translate that into a helpful way for a drug development company to say, now I understand how I'm going to actually test how my treatment works, which is really important. We've got 9 new projects across 14 institutions with 3 new countries as well. So this is really a global effort across research and development across all subtypes. And when we think about all the ways that we invest and spend our dollars wisely, we invest a lot of money in genetic therapies and delivery because it's an important project for us. But small molecules are important. This is like things that you would take as a pill. Natural history and biomarkers, as I mentioned, a really key part of how we get the community ready, the system of drug development ready, so that when the biology happens like it did in SWORD, you can move with lightning speed. And SWORD's an example of about as fast as you can imagine. INC is the Inherited Neuropathy Consortium. That's a group of 20 global clinical sites. Again, the best of the best who are working together on things like outcome measures, on things like natural history. We work very closely with them, and we're going to be talking a lot more about the INC as the year goes on this year. In vitro, which is cell culture models, animal models, clinical trials, And then fundamentally, we invest heavily in gene discovery as well. So for the 40% of the folks who don't have their genetic diagnosis, we're working every day to find a good diagnosis for you. And you can corner Stefan Zuckner if you have any questions about that. He'll be up on the stage later. So in our annual report, which is on our website, you will see a list of every single project that's ongoing. I have it in the background here for you today. It's a huge number of studies. We don't have time to go through all of those today, but we want to be really transparent about everything that we do and how we invest the dollars that we raise from the community. But fundamentally, when we step back and think about how do we move forward in support of treatments and ultimately a cure, it's about these connections that we make because of the footprint that we have. It's about taking academic labs and institutions, the best of the best, who are thinking about not just CMT, but peripheral neuropathies broadly, patients and their clinicians who are ready to go to help us, contract research organizations, animal studies, people who are ready to test things, and connecting them with biotech and pharma companies to find a way to work together and find new pathways to get treatments to patients as quickly as we can. Ultimately, we work very closely with biotech and pharma because although things tend to start in universities, they do move into biotech and pharma. And here's some of our closest partnerships up on the stage. And if you're an alliance partner with us, you have access to our preclinical toolbox and advice, our STAR advisory board, which helps to answer questions about how do we think about development in this space. And because we have so many ongoing projects, we're able to use the data from one part of CMT to help development of another type of CMT. And so that network really builds and becomes synergistically powerful in terms of accelerating the progress here. We've got over 50 alliance partners with 17 alliance partner studies separate from sponsored research with partners working across the whole CMT spectrum. Of course, our big sponsor is Applied Therapeutics, and this is a story that you heard a little bit about this morning. We'll hear more about today because this shows so well the value of the connections that we make and the way that we've got the world ready to test for CMT treatments so that when the science is there, you can move very quickly. NMD Pharma, who's an alliance partner, they've got a table outside. They have an approach that's not a genetic story, it's a biology story. And they're heading into a clinical trial. So stay tuned for that one. You'll hear more about it. It's patients as partners in research. But that's a biology story that's, again, across subtypes, could be enrolling patients from many, many subtypes. So we're really excited about partnering with them and all the potential that's there. Ultimately, I think the key message here is progress in one CMT type is progress for all CMT types. It's really exciting to be part of an organization that has the depth and the breadth of the talent, the brains, the thinking, and the connections so that we can bring it all together on behalf of the CMT community and move towards treatments and a cure as quickly as possible. And we're excited to share more about it today. We look forward to the morning. And I think in the next step, we're going to move into sort of that biology approach where we're going to take a deeper dive in the three groups, demyelinating, axonal, and unknown subtypes. And so feel free to attend at least one of those, and you can see the recordings online as well if you wanted to see more than one. So we look forward to engaging with you today, sharing more about what we're doing, and hearing from you as well. How can we work together to empower patients and accelerate research, which is what we're working on every single day here at the CMTA. So thank you so much for sharing your Sunday with us. We really appreciate it.